Just landed in Leadership and Enlightenment, a podcast where the guests are exceptional humans that have faced their fears to crest into their best selves, growing into a way they can help their communities, creating opportunities, and sharing their secrets and their tips that they learned along the way. Without further ado, here we are, my friends. Have a great time today and enjoy Leadership and Enlightenment. Jessica, conversations like this are always my favorite. We've known each other a very short time, but we've had some pretty cool, insightful conversations. Last week when we jumped in, I realized, you have a light shining inside of you, my friend. It's pretty bright, and you're doing a lot with it. And I know the audience is going to enjoy hearing about it today. Why don't you set us up a little bit? Tell us where you came from, how you got here.
Love to. So my name's Jessica Bryant, and I live in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been in St. Louis or around St. Louis my entire life. I went to high school down at Lake of the Ozarks where my dad lives, and that's always a St. Louis thing, right? They'll always ask you, where did you go to high school? So I automatically get out of that answer since it wasn't here in St. Louis.
Ozarks. That goes right to the movie or to the series to me.
You know, Dean, I haven't watched it, and I haven't because I have a different view of the lake, and I know it's just for fun, but I don't really, from what I've heard from others, I don't really want to see them destroy the people at the lake and how they make it look, because
it's going to change
I
your
still
whole
have
view
lots
of
of
it.
family. Yeah, I have lots of family and friends out there, and I definitely don't want that. So that's kind of where I grew up, and I love it here in St. Louis. I consider myself somewhat of a professional student. I went and got my undergrad, my master's, my second master's, postgraduate certifications. So lots of education and schooling because I just like to learn, not necessarily for any other reason other than that. Grew up in a small trailer here in Missouri, just south of St. Louis County, Jefferson County. And I grew up with a family member that was addicted to meth and was operating a meth lab out of our home. So I was young and very confused by a lot of what happened. Most people don't believe me when I say the trailer was haunted, so I'm not going to go into that, but it was. And then you add the complexities of the people that were coming in and out of our home, and it was a very distressing experience.
Did
At
you
13,
feel lonely in those years when you were at home?
you know, it's so interesting, Dean. I I have so few memories of my childhood. I feel like my coping mechanism for my brain was to just shut all of that off.
Yeah.
And in therapy lately, I've been uncovering some of it, and some of it's okay, and then some of it is really bad, actually. And
Yeah.
so I'm not trying to dig into that much more, but I did feel lonely. I felt like I had the utmost desire to fit in. I was a heavier kid, and I was
Yeah.
heavier all my life until the last couple of years, but I didn't really fit in anywhere unless I was willing to do things that I didn't really feel in my core were very good. Since I had, one of them was great, the others were suspicious, but we made it work.
We all had friends like that too. I grew up in Las Vegas at a time where it wasn't very cultured. I don't know if it is now at all, but it was also very small. And there was a lot of things that happened around me too. During those years, I look back and realize I identified with a lot of this, not realizing it kind of stuck to me. Did you feel like you were finding your place later on in your high school experience and when you started getting to that area?
Yeah, so just for context sake, I'll go back just a bit. At the time that all of this was taking place, when I turned 13, my brother, who was 6 and I was 13, we were removed from the home and put into foster care. So we
Okay.
spent a very brief period of time in foster care before we both went to live with our dads. My experience with my dad ended up being incredible. I have an amazing stepmom. My dad is just an excellent person. And so I did, really. It gave me a chance to flourish in high school, gave me a chance to do the things that I loved while in high school that I wouldn't have been able to do on the sitting. And really, it just gave me a chance to figure out who I was and navigate that so that I could move past the trauma that I had experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. And where are you working into now? I mean, how do you experience your life in this place?
It's so interesting because I got divorced about 4 to 5 years ago. I have a young daughter who's going to be 9 this weekend. And
Congratulations.
so, thank you. She's very excited. She's getting a balance beam for her birthday. So, she's really excited.
Oh. Is she into gymnastics too, huh? That's cool.
She is. Yeah. She doesn't want to do the classes because she thinks the classes are boring. So, she just practices her own things on her own equipment, and she just has a
She'll
blast
figure
with
it
that.
out.
So, it works out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works out really well. But as I've moved forward in my life, I have always been kind of that type A, gonna get everything done, stereotypical firstborn daughter.
Yeah.
And so Post divorce, I really spent some time getting to know myself because I was that person for so long that I didn't really understand how I could be different in the places that I was at. And I realized how much I let go of my actual life during my marriage. It was just work and taking care of a home and a kid. And so having
Hmm.
the opportunity to shift that a bit in the last few years has given me a chance to really look into the things that I'm best at and how I want my life to look.
I love that. What I How do I want to start this? So I shifted as well, and it happened like my mid 40s. And I didn't see it coming. I got introduced to a group of people and I ended up in a group meditation and I thought like, "Oh, I don't know what this is and it makes me feel very weird and uncomfortable." And now I'm that guy that's sitting there making others feel like they're very weird and uncomfortable because I get it. It makes sense to me now. It wasn't such a bad journey after all in the last 7 years, but it was a reflection point for me to realize like I was coming from a place that I had been conditioned into a lot of the way I was acting, and I was coming out into myself a little bit and understanding what that meant. And it became enamoring for me. It's like I found a new friend that I went in there and started just playing around with and going back into my past and, thinking about like these things. Like my mother was twice divorced. And I remember when she divorced my father at 4, it was just kind of like, hey, we're not going to be here anymore. And I realized looking back on that, that I was really upset about the fact that I wasn't given a choice, even at 4 years old, that I was going to have my life changed. She didn't know any different. They didn't know any different at all. But I had to release a lot of that energy, knowing that it had no impact really anymore in who I was and what I was doing. What are some of the experiences that you went through that you really grew from?
So I think, very similar to what you just talked about. My daughter was 4 when we separated. And one of those many degrees that I mentioned was in psychology and counseling. And so my first thought was therapy. I've got to get her in therapy. She's got to go to therapy. So immediately we started play therapy. We had a really great play therapist, and she was so involved with McKenna and understanding just how she could grow. And because of that, I feel like that's given my daughter the space to be who she is. Father and we do well as co-parents, but
Mm,
there's some challenges, of course, as to be expected that have caused us some trouble. But overall, getting through being divorced and being on my own was really a challenge. And for a while, I stayed with my mom to get back on my feet because I was still paying for the house that my ex was living in. And
mm.
then once I finally got all that done, moving out and finding my own place again, it was like the first time for everything all over. But hey, you're 33 at this point.
It's all right.
Yeah, and it's been great. This last few months have been the most instrumental, I think, in my personal growth because I previously worked for Edward Jones for 9
Mm.
years as a senior human resources leader, and I took a voluntary separation. And by doing that, I have been fully engaged in building my business and learning new things, taking care of myself differently, giving myself the time to sleep. Like I told you, slept till 11 this morning. I
Isn't
couldn't
that
believe it.
amazing?
But
Yeah.
yeah, but just giving my body a chance to be what it's meant to be and giving my mind the space to find clarity.
Yeah. It's tough in the beginning to give yourself any time. I heard this once and it really just resonated with me. Like we go out as the type of humans we are, people pleasers, and we tend to give ourselves away to everybody all day long and never take any time for ourselves. And that's where I think like creating that morning, stopping point for yourself when people get up in the morning and deciding like this first 20 minutes is going to be for me. Even if I start looking at my phone or get distracted, I always pull myself back out of that thought and say, you're going to need to go do this pre-shift with the universe is what I call it. Lighten it up a little bit. It's not really supposed to meant to be feel like this serious thing. It's just really about finding these grounding points. And we kind of touched on this earlier in the conversation. For me, it became a very mathematical thing. I realized like I was dealing with the issue of having cortisol running through my body all day long because I was letting fear to throw me into a fight or flight mindset versus living in my best place and accepting the world around me as this amazing place to learn from. Like you have incredible doctor or educational accomplishments and yet in our own lives we actually have to go in and study ourselves on the inside out and really take those, you know, aptitudes and those ideals that we learn and apply it in a different way and find this place that we can sit in. And I'm sure that you've run through some of these things and you've gotten to a place where you could share some techniques. What is it that you're using in your daily practice that has changed how you feel about things?
It's so funny because being the type A person I am the most and focused in the morning. And I cannot for the life of myself get myself to stick to a morning routine. So I work through that the best that I can because the days that I have my daughter, I take her to school, got to be up earlier. And since I've been what I call my mini retirement, since I've been on my mini retirement, it's so interesting that my body is like, nah, girl, we're not getting up at 6:30 every day. We're not doing this because it's not what works best for you. But what I've really done in this time is not only have I focused on building Bryant and Co Leadership Lab, but I've really spent time trying to understand the conditioning that women go through around the need to be productive. I
Mm-hmm.
have this like internal fear that the world is going to crash down on me if my to-do list is too long. Like yesterday, I told you I took kind of a self-care day and I binged Netflix all day and just hung around the house. And then this morning, I'm like, you didn't get this done. You didn't get that done. You didn't do this. And now
Yeah.
you. So it's
Yeah.
taken me time to really move past that intention. And some of the ways that I do that is to try to set the intentions for myself a little bit. So, like I mentioned for you, I burned some sage before we started our
I love that.
conversation because I always say when I do that, that I'm manifesting health, wealth, and happiness. And then I'll throw in anything else that I want to put in there. But those are the main things that I want is to just find ways to be, healthy, happy, and provide for my daughter.
Yeah, I'm
So
tuned
that's
into
probably the
that.
biggest thing. And then this
I love
vibration
that.
plate back here. I love that thing.
Do you? That's awesome. Well,
I love it so much.
take us into this new business that you're in. I'm so excited to hear about it.
It is the craziest thing, Dean, because I had a wonderful friend at Edward Jones that was helping me with my own personal development. And we were talking about the things that I really like doing. And in my most recent career with them, spoke a lot to different universities, different organizations, et cetera, about what we did, how to land the jobs, giving them interview advice, working one-on-one with their resumes, et cetera. And I just loved it. Being on stage was an absolute place for me. And when I was younger, I was co-captain of the debate team in high school, and I went to one state championship a couple times with my partner,
Congratulations. That's
and
cool.
it was amazing. So I'm talking to this friend, giving him this information, and he's like, "Have you ever thought about being a professional speaker?" And I shit you not, Dean, I had this moment of like, oh my God, can I
That's it.
actually do that? That is a job. There's no way that's a job.
Love that.
And so as we went on with it was so fun because found the speaker lab. They found me somehow through a Facebook algorithm, I bet. And I just fell in love with the program from the first piece. And I realized how much more there was to learn about being able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really leaned in to say, okay, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to speak a message, what is it that the world needs to hear from me? And the thing that I have found is that leaders, especially in corporate America, misunderstand what empathy is or how to use it. And so now I teach leaders to play nice
Awesome.
through teaching them how to use empathetic leadership strategically. I really hone in on how they build the connection because I think a lot of people think that empathetic leadership looks like, tell me about your weekend, let's hear the
Right.
bar stories,
Yeah.
let's hear the family drama or whatever it might be at the water cooler that you talk about, but it's really not. Strategic empathy is about understanding people and being able to use that understanding for good. So for leaders, for example, it's very much like you have these amazing associates. How are you building their individual development plans? Are you leaning in as a leader when things go wrong or when shit hits the fan? Like, what are you doing in those moments that you can use what I could just call it the connection framework, that you can use that to say, okay, hold on. How can I approach this in a way that's both empathetic to my associate, but that also gets me to the right information? People are more willing to be truthful when you're being genuine and authentic.
It's so true. I mean, even in my executive career, I wished I had been taken aside by leadership and asked, like, what are your hangups, man? What are the things that really scare the heck out of you? And I would have told them, look, I'm neurodivergent. Like, there's going to be a
Same.
time I'm dyslexic. I'm going to flip a word around in a presentation. I don't want it to be in front of the board, but oh my God, like, these things, these fear points, they would throw me into white noise, I called it, where I'm just literally reacting in this scenario. I'm not really connected to it. And that would translate into how I was relating to my team, because now I'm just afraid of how leadership's approaching things. And I'm not considering what the team's consideration is, because to me, they're not relevant in the way that I'm protecting myself in a fight or flight scenario. And if I had tools like you're saying back then, where I could release through that, and I knew like I could stand on these pillars of thought, I think that's super valuable. I think that that's literally what this podcast is all about, is to share, like, within this journey, there's this light that comes through that really shines in this authenticity of understanding others' growth and what really affects them. And when you start to tune into that, I've used this reference before. I call it the Ted Lasso effect. You become that coach instead of the owner of the team like Rebecca was. I was always deferring to the ownership role, and the players were irrelevant. And I'm not embarrassed to say that because I think a lot of people do that in management. But when you're truly a leader, you grow into this empathetic state where you realize like this emotional status might signal something in this representative that's working around me. And if I could help them get through that to keep them out of that white light, then we're all going to be stronger, or out of that, that hairy part of the light, I should say. We're all going to be stronger in the end.
Absolutely. And, it took me a little bit to get to that point, but I remember when I was younger in my early 20s, late teens, when I would have jobs and just the variation in the types of leaders that I would have and then what that would do for me. I had a leader when I was like 19 or 20. His name was Kenny, who was the first leader that ever told me when I left a shift how much he appreciated me. And I'm like, oh, I kind of like hearing that. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
nice. And he taught me about jumping in, right? When things were crazy and the store was hectic, Kenny was behind a register. Like we were doing things to help clients regardless of what the leadership structure looked like. And for me, I took that from him as a way to emulate good leadership. I recognized how he talked to us, how he would guide us through situations that were challenging. He would ask us to come with a solve for the problem before we brought him the problem. And really giving us a chance to kind of lean into how do we want to work with these people and then how do we do it better. So when I got into more formal structured leadership throughout the rest of my life, my first thing is that these people that I'm leading, they're adults. They are adults. They are people that can manage and handle their work. They are people that I can trust to do what they're supposed to. And so many other leaders think that you have to earn that trust. And I feel like that trust is given immediately because that's what gives us the chance to find out how you work. What do you do? How do you want to do things? Where's your career going, et cetera? And just having that moment to say, I know you guys are the experts, not me. So having that conversation of like, I really need your thoughts on this and how do we want to move this
I
forward?
love that.
Because to me and especially in my most recent team, we were all really good friends. There was 3 of us and I would go to them and be like, okay, guys, I'm struggling here. I'm not really sure how we want to move this forward, but I know that I need you guys to have a say in this. So how are we going to do it? I need your
Wow.
opinions. And then when we would talk together, it was always like, here's what you're doing really well. Here are some things that I would encourage you to improve on. And here's how I think it might work. But they always knew, and this is my model for leadership, they always knew that I had their back in rooms as an advocate when they couldn't be one for themselves. So if we were in a room talking about talent, we were in a room talking about promotions, or we were talking about opportunity, it was always, hold on, wait, my associates are ready for XYZ or whatnot. And then in times of challenges, if a leader came to me and said, hey, I had this experience with your associate, I'd be like, thank you for sharing. I need to talk to them though, because there's 2 sides to every story. So let me figure out the whole details
Right.
before I react. And then let me follow back up with you. Give me 2 days to talk to Sarah and we'll go through all of it. And then once I have Sarah's perspective, I'd love to chat with you more and then see if there's truly an issue we need to address.
It's so powerful. It's just those 2 spots alone. Let's unpack that for a second. Like the last one you just mentioned really hit something because I had this employee that she was an outstanding representative of the team and very strong thinker. We just weren't clicking in a certain way. And one day she took a step in a direction that involved another department, and the other department started coming after her with sticks of fire. And I knew the better, so I obviously called the leadership of that department and straightened it out pretty quick so that she didn't feel this. That appreciation that she showed for me stepping up for her at that moment changed our relationship path forever. We're still friends to this day because she could see within that. And I know as leaders, it's hard sometimes for us to show that appreciation. But what were the simple words that Kenny would use when he would say he appreciated you?
Literally say, Jessica, I appreciate you. You work hard here and I'm thankful for that. He's like, you're good with customers. I appreciate that. He's like, you take time to understand the problem and I appreciate that. And, it was
the simplicity of it, right?
Yes, very much so.
Just meaning it and not having to create this big conversation. And that I'm going to leave you with this last one and hand it back. But that's kind of where I think that as a leader, I got caught up in having to always be right. I was told by somebody once, unfortunately, like as a leader, you can never be wrong. And so I noticed how you approached your team by offering the vulnerability of, hey, I don't really understand what I'm going to do about this, and I need your help as a team. I think that step that you just put yourself in vulnerability is an amazing tool that I never used and I could have. And now I would know different as well in the way that I see this world. I just love where you're going with this. Keep telling us more.
Me, it's how do what I want to be treated. I don't want someone to talk down to me. I don't want someone to berate me for things, especially if there's more to the story. And quite frankly, life is hard. I mean, we have a lot going on. I mean,
Yeah.
between the craziness like that we have added with government all the time, we've always got
Yes.
personal things going on in our lives. There's always something. And so for me, it's like if you're going to be here with me every day, 8 hours a day for 40 hours a week, like not only are we destined to be friends, right? We're going to be friends, but how can I be the type of person that elevates you? So for example, I had an associate recently. She didn't report to me, but she was someone that we had recruited for this higher leadership program that we offered at the firm. And we had a hard time finding a placement for her because she had struggled with one of the licensing exams. And so there were certain roles that require it and some that didn't. And I just adored this woman. We resonated. She was a single mom like myself, and she's out there trying to do the best she can for her kids. And this passion that she just had, I was like, you're infectious. Like what you feel about how you want to work is exactly how most people should approach it. It's that edge of curiosity and education. Know how to do this. I don't really know, but how can I learn? And when
Right.
I saw that in her, that this just internal drive, I was like, we're going to find a position for this woman. Hands down, like no deal, it's happening. And so my team felt the same way. And so we had a sister team that we worked with that handled that. And so between the couple of us, it was really like, what are we driving forward for her? Because she is showing us that she's going to show up. And when she
Yeah.
shows up, she gives 100%. And I don't care what the role is, she can learn it. And
Mhm.
so after a while of really working through this, a year of almost uncertainty of what we were going to do, the constant, okay, how are we doing this? Staying in touch with her, staying in touch with the team and figuring out where she goes, we were able to finally retain her this year.
That's so
So
cool.
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like you just see the spark in someone, like you said, and
Yeah.
you turn it from a spark to a flame and then you let them run with it. I'm a
Yeah.
firm believer in just, you have to be understanding first. And I'm not gonna lie and say I'm a SME of everything because I'm not. And that
Right.
only hurts me and the team when I make a stupid decision somewhere because I didn't know the right information.
Yeah.
Because that's happened. And you don't want to end up in a situation where your team loses that respect for you because then you lose your ability to be impactful.
Yeah. Credibility is like a 1 to 10 ratio. If it's going to take you 10 efforts to create credibility and one to lose it all. And
Oh,
we
yes,
see
absolutely.
we see representation of that in the news and different stories just even recently. I've been using this analogy lately, like I love how what you're taking into this, and this is how I describe the analogy. You're not taking in a spreadsheet focus that equates to the bottom. We've created a spreadsheet that's a circle, and it has outcomes throughout it that have emotional impact, that have value driven reasons, that have daisy chain effects. And so I think in the corporate world, a lot of what I'm preaching out there as well is like we need to break down this facade that we've all been working around and trying to control. And we need to start to empower and realize like these employees, they're not living in the same mindsets that we came out of. I mean, when I was younger, you spent 7 years at a job, you developed loyalty, and they were loyal
Mhm.
to you to help you get this next job. Well, along the line, that stuff changed. And all of a sudden, the value adds became what experience can you bring to the table? What's your influence in social media? I mean, how are you connected now? It's not just a traditional degree to a job. There's a lot of influence around that circle, and all of it's built in this idea of relationships and how we're creating relationships in this new age. In an idea that it's a TikTok, quick moving thought process, or that, other generations are coming up and we are having to understand where our generation kind of separates out of that. When did you run into something along the way that you really had to peel back on and assess like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming? I'm really going to have to relook at what I'm doing. I know I wanted to go in this direction, but now I feel like I've got to be open and thinking about this a little differently.
That is a great question. So, I recently built the financial advisor internship program for the firm, and we hadn't had one in many, many years. So, we were really kind of starting fresh on how do we do this and work with the students in that way to make sure that they are getting a good experience to understand what being a financial advisor is. Because you wouldn't believe how many people would come up to us at career fairs and say, what's a financial advisor do? And then they would want to be in finance or financial advisor, and they thought that meant looking at the ticker all day. And so we really approached this from a different perspective. The growth for me was in leading this project from start to finish, like being the person that was solely responsible for what needed to be done and executed. But I knew that was not like that's not how I can do things because I can lead through that, but there's gaps in my knowledge. So I have never been a financial advisor, even though I'm
Mhm.
licensed. And so my first thing was, let's call some financial advisors. Let's have a conversation. Tell me what you do every day. And then we pulled together some senior financial advisors, been there for a very long time that had been interns in the past, and just asked them, if you put yourself in that position now, what would you do for these students to where they're learning exactly what they should before they take this kind of job? And so we built it out and it worked out really, really well. It's the fastest project that I've ever seen done at the firm. We both built and implemented our first round in less than 5 months. We hosted interns that summer. We started in January.
Whoa.
And after that first round, things went really well, but we had a lot of areas where it's like, okay, how do we make that better? Something here didn't click and we need to reevaluate that. And it required me to be open to say, okay, yeah, maybe that wasn't the best decision that I've made. I didn't have X, Y, Z up to here. And now that we have that, what does that mean? How do we reformulate what we're doing or what our offering looks like? And
Yeah.
so I'll fast forward. Right before I left was at our 2-year mark, and we had reached a 98% overall satisfaction score from financial
Congratulations.
advisors and the interns.
Wow.
And we came in almost 200,000 under budget. And it was really exciting because it gave us a chance to structure how we wanted the interactions between our home office and our financial advisors to look. And it was
Yeah.
beautiful.
And you were seeing
But
an
there were a lot of
impact.
steps. Yeah, and there was a lot of steps where I was like, shit, what do I do now? I don't know what to
Yeah.
do. And so I would reach out to those specialists that were able to help me. And it was just by being authentic with them that I was
And
able to say, like,
learning.
this is what we're trying to do. Yeah, and being
Yeah.
open, right?
And
I
being a
don't know, so
learner.
teach me.
Yeah, being a learner. I think that this is a really, I think we can key off on this in the tail end of this conversation, leave the audience with a really good thought is, I always was caught up in having to know everything in leadership to look right or to feel like I knew what I was doing. And so I was very defensive around people with things that I didn't know. And I would be like a secret agent trying to figure it out without them knowing. Where if you're just authentic about it and you put it out there, I learned from an associate that apparently I had skills and talents that he was looking at that he couldn't do. And it really dawned on me at that moment, like, if we're doing the best that we can do and we're in our lane and we allow ourselves to learn, the stress level will be so low in this subject because you're not taking on the accountability of failure. You're realizing like you're part of the growth and the execution of it. And when you can shift out of being held accountable for failure and into the idea of growth, now you can release yourself into the idea of all knowledge and let that come through the other individuals in your community, your efforts. And I've said to myself recently, like, I think I literally can learn anything I want in this world if I had the time to do it. And the only thing that
Absolutely.
causes stress in my life is time. So I could be a doctor, but if I decided to be a doctor in 6 months, I'm going to be very stressed about that because that's going to be impossible. If you allow yourself the 10 years to be a doctor, then it's a possibility. And we have to stop as humans limiting or restricting ourselves from opportunity that we think we can do, take the lid off by just allowing a lane to be there for that possibility that could happen. And I think that that's
Yeah.
what you're really teaching leaders when you're having these pillar conversations with them. And I'm so excited to see how your teams are going to change and how you're going to grow. It's a really incredible thing to listen to the way that you describe what you're doing. Tell the audience how they can find you. I'm going to have it in the show notes, but I know everybody's after this little conversation is going to want to hear you for a coaching session for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I do one-on-one coaching sessions, and we can work on anything that you feel like you need, more so in leadership, job development, et cetera. I recently had a client, we spent 4 hours doing resume reviews and all of that with her. But you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at J Bryant Speaks on Instagram, Jessica Bryant Speaks on Facebook, and my website is just jbryantspeaks.com, so you can get a hold of me there as well. I want to leave your audience with this because I think it's
Please.
something that you touched on right there that was so important. Authenticity is not about how you display yourself in some ways. Authenticity is about, is this the right representation of who I am? Because that's the only way that other people can see you for who you are and appreciate you for who you are. Authenticity is not easy. I know that most of your listeners can't see us in person, but how many leaders do you know with a lip ring and a nose ring and about 30 tattoos, right? I've had purple hair, pink hair, green hair. Those are things that are just authentic to me because it's fun. It matches my
Yeah.
personality. but it's also breaking down for people the stigma of what authenticity looks like. So helping people understand that authenticity bleeds into your connection portals to people is really, really important.
There you
You
go.
need something that lights your soul on fire, and find it, because it does exist.
You're so right. I'm going to leave it right there, my friend. I look forward to talking to you real soon and catching up next year. Have a wonderful
Thank you.
holiday
This was
season.
great.
Yeah,
You as well.
absolutely.
Well, there we go. Another amazing example of the universe working in its magnificent way today. Appreciate you showing up and look forward to seeing you again at Leadership and Enlightenment.